Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss the arcade cabinets that I wish to own. There, of course, are a ridiculous amount of arcade games out there, some of which are easier to get than others. If you're going with the arcade one-up style, they of course have a lot of the classics from back in the day. As far as I'm concerned, the pinnacle of old school arcade games I want is the combo Miss Pac-Man Galaga. Like that, I would love to have that, and also I would love to have it if I could just mod them a little bit and get that hyper speed version, because we have that at my job where they bought like an arcade cabinet that's it's just like a bunch of ROMs and stuff, and you could play Miss Pac-Man but like the sped up version, and I'm like, this is the best version of it. Like it's so fun. I already loved Miss Pac-Man, but playing it like at hyper speed, I was like, this is so fun to me. Like I love games where you can just, you tweak the speed. It's a little harder when Galaga's at super speed. I feel like Miss Pac-Man's a much easier game, but definitely love that. So whenever if I ever get one, I'm definitely gonna have the plans of modding it a little, at least to have the multiple versions in there. So that would just be super fun. But that was always the classic. For Arcade 1-Up, of course, I still don't think they actually have it. They might have it now where you can do the Miss Pac-Man and Galaga, but it's like the small thing that just sits on like a tabletop or whatever, and I don't really like those. I wanted to do like a even their arcade cabinets aren't like full size, but they had one that had like 80 effing games on it, which of course means like 5, but it had like everything except for Miss Pac-Man, or it had everything except for Galaga. Like one of the two was missing, and I was like, that's all I needed, was to just have both those games on there. Plus it had other ones that I liked, and I was like, I think it was Miss Pac-Man that was missing, and I was like, of course it is. So I was definitely upset with that one. I don't know if I actually would have ended up owning that game, but I definitely would have looked into it a lot more if both those games were on there, because like I said, it had other stuff that was like, okay, I played that. I'm pretty sure Dig Dug was one of them. Love me some Dig Dug. But the Galaga Miss Pac-Man combo is like the arcade cabinet that I would love to get. And it doesn't have to be, the classic original version, but if I could get one from Arcade 1-Up and it was, it had both those games included, I would love to get it. But also, I do have like this weird thing where I don't like the tabletop versions. I like to have like the full, standing versions of the arcades, but I also don't want it to just be Miss Pac-Man and Galaga, because I do think they have that. I think that at some point they came out with that, and then I was like, like if it was the original, sure, which would cost a ridiculous amount of money, and then at the same time, it's like, you guys have a bunch of these where you put like multiple games on, and it's like, as much as I want that combination of just the two, I don't know if I would do it unless it was the original cabinet for just those two games. If it was Arcade 1-Up, I'm like, I don't know if I'd buy it for, like their recreation of it, and then it's just those two games, because it's still, hundreds of dollars. And it's like, well, it would almost be stupid for me to spend hundreds of dollars to buy that when I could save that and get like, they had like the Ninja Turtles one for a minute, and that was insane. That was, that actually was like the full 4-player cabinet, and I remember looking at that like, could that fit in my apartment? Obviously I didn't buy it, that would have been stupid, but it could have fit in my apartment. I just would have had to do it like through the, the backsliding door, but it would have fit. It would have fit. I did some measurements. But moving on from other arcade games, even though I would love to have, a classic Turtles in Time arcade cabinet, one of the big ones that I would love, and this goes to what I would say was like my, we'll call it the first pinnacle for me, Time Crisis 2. I would love Time Crisis 2. I would love it, if, eventually get all the money in the world, I'll buy all of them. I probably, on an excessively rare occasion, I'd probably play Time Crisis 1, but I would definitely play the crap out of some Time Crisis 2 and 3 and 4. I enjoy those games, but of course Time Crisis 2 was the one that was in arcades the longest. I feel like, God, the amount of time it took before they ended up actually making a Time Crisis 3, when you really think about it, was an insanely long time. Like Time Crisis 2 came out, let's see, the first Time Crisis game was on the first PlayStation. Time Crisis 2 might have been on PS2. I can't really recall, but of course the graphics were definitely better for the second game than the first game. And then by the time Time Crisis 3 finally came out, I believe 3 and 4 are both like PS3, Xbox One era or whatever, end of 360, early Xbox One era. But it took a long time before Time Crisis 3 ended up coming out. So for me, Time Crisis is like, boom, Time Crisis 2, you got your baby pink and baby blue guns. Of course, you go with the blue gun. First off, blue is my favorite. But also, you get the submachine gun in like the second level of the game. And I don't know why they coded it this way, but for some reason it's only tied to like the blue gun, and then I think the person who has the pink gun gets it like way later in the game. But it's not like you both get it, or it's like whoever's fastest. It's like, nope, only this person gets this gun in this level. So it actually makes way more sense. If you ever happen to go to the arcade and you just haven't really played Time Crisis in a minute, that's a little hint for you. Go with blue, because if you get to the second level, you're guaranteed, as long as, I think you do have to still shoot the gun. I don't really recall 100%, it's been a minute, but you're the only person that can get the submachine gun during that segment. So it's not like, you know, I don't know, like I said, I don't know why they did it that way. Like, why not just make it where both characters can get it? But pick blue. I don't remember the characters' names, of course, but, you know, pick the blue gun, because you'll get the submachine gun in the second level. So just throwing that out there as like just a random little tip for like just a little bit of extra fun. Go with the blue gun. But I love that back in the day. Of course, blew my mind because you pull the trigger and the slide actually, like, you know, the gun, you know, there's recoil. Craziest thing in the world. And even when you got the submachine gun, it would actually move at the speed it was shooting. And I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. So I love that. That was before, I think that was before I even really knew about like airsoft guns and stuff like that, where, you know, you put the gas in and it actually does it. That was my first experience, was doing that through Time Crisis. And it was like, whoa, you pull the trigger and it shoots back. Like, that's crazy. So I loved that when I was a kid. And the game itself is super fun. And just the mechanic of, like, you know, you step on the pedal and stuff. Like, who knows how many hours I put into that game, either playing by myself or like my dad and I playing at, you know, playing at GameWorks at Great Lakes Crossing, RIP GameWorks. But love that cabinet. Like, that's definitely one of them where it's like, it might not be number one. It's hard to say. Like, I did say the pinnacle of pinnacle, but there's another pinnacle of pinnacle games. And also, just a shout out to House of the Dead. I wouldn't get House of the Dead. I mean, if I had all the money in the world, why wouldn't I? But I would get House of the Dead 3. If I was like choosing, I would do House of the Dead 3 first. And that's only because of the fact that they had the shotgun. Same super bright color, which I'm sure was some sort of like rule, you know, like don't make the guns look realistic. So that's why I was like, you know, baby blue and baby pink for Time Crisis. And when House of the Dead 3 came out, they had shotguns, and you actually would pump the shotguns, which I was like, that's super cool. But it was also that same thing where it was more like I guess turquoise or teal, if you like. But I always thought that was funny. I was like, they almost look, well, they look as plastic as they are, and they just put like the most like vibrant color they can. Is like, it's not a real weapon. And then that's, you know, I guess those were the rules. Even Crisis Zone, like the sort of Time Crisis spinoff, same thing. I think that was a little darker shade of blue, but it may have been the same shade of blue for the machine gun in that. And that was always a super fun game too. I love that one. That one's super cool for the destructible environments. That was always the best part of that one. Like, you could just shoot through the whole store, and like you're in the mall and everything, and it's, you know, Time Crisis, but just the destructibility was like up, you know, taken to 11. So I always loved that. So of course, you know, like I said, I'd get all the Time Crisis games, especially 2, 3, and 4, and I would definitely get Crisis Zone, House of the Dead 3, and then the other one that's always like right at the top is the Star Wars Trilogy Arcade. I love that arcade cabinet. I played that so much when I was young. It was the same as, you know, Time Crisis. I probably put more time into Time Crisis, because especially the co-op element, I probably put more time into that than I have, you know, some games I actually own right now. But same goes for the Star Wars arcade cabinet. I love that back in the day. It was, at the time, the only way I could really experience, you know, doing the Forest Moon of Endor run, where it's like, boom, I got my speeder bike, which is my favorite vehicle in all of Star Wars, and you're moving at super speeds and stuff, and, you know, you can slow down and speed up and boost, and then you gotta, you know, weave in between the trees and shoot left and right and everything, and or like move left and right so you can shoot them. And it was so fun. And then if you're good enough, which I'll be honest, I never was. I only ever really got like those extra boss levels and stuff if I had extra credits. Like, that was it. I was not great at that. I could not beat the Death Star run. Like, I couldn't do that junk. Like, that whole level, they start sending out TIE fighters, and I'm like, there's like 18 TIE fighters. I'm not hitting all these TIE fighters. I was always getting hit. Like, I was not good enough to make it through that first level. I could do Endor. I could beat Endor, and I was fairly okay at Hoth, but it was like, I'd have to start at the last movie and go backwards in order to do that junk, because I'm like, I can't start from the beginning. I was never good enough to do that for that Death Star run. Like, that junk was tough for me. And that was, not even really, technically it wasn't even a Death Star run. It was just going to the battle around the Death Star was hard enough for me before even contemplating being able to get the shot off. Like, I think I only ever did it like once or twice, and it was, once again, it was because I had credits. I never beat that without having to like use extra lives, because I was not that good. But I always loved that element when I first found out about that, and it's like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like, you can pick any level you want, but if you go in order, you get bonus missions. You can go through and it's like, hey, if you do the Hawk level and then you go through there, you get to play the beginning of Return of the Jedi. Like, you don't just start and doing the speeder bike chase. You actually get to play a special boss battle where you fight against Boba Fett. And it was like, that's super cool that they put that in there, where it's like, hey, if you choose the movie before this one, you start from the beginning, you actually get bonus levels throughout, where it's like, hey, here's a special level since you actually played through, here's an in-between level. And then I think I don't remember if you have to beat all three of them to get the Darth Vader thing. I think you can still start at Endor, and then they basically just let you go on from there, and you can still get that bonus fight, and you do the final battle against Vader, which I don't think I ever won either. But I'd be willing to take on that challenge, especially if it was free. I'd be able to pull it off, but I'd challenge myself, try to get my skills up to not have to use like 18 lives to get all the way through it. But I would love to play that. I think it was always a decent length of time. Of course, if you ran through and did like, a perfect run and hit everybody and never took damage, I'm sure much like old school NES games, that would probably take you like 20 to 30 minutes. But even for an arcade game, that's not bad. I mean, same for Time Crisis, I guess. Like, those games are decent length, although I do think Time Crisis 2 is a fairly long game. I feel like even that first level before you even get to the forest, I feel like that's almost like a 15 to 20 minute level. I think Time Crisis 2 actually takes a couple of hours to be going all the way through, so that might have a bit more time to it compared to the Star Wars arcade. But those were always like the top two. I was like, I'll get Time Crisis 2 and the Star Wars Trilogy arcade. Like, I have to have those. I also wouldn't mind having the Star Wars Battle Pod. I played that, and I definitely like the projection of it all. Like, you sit in, it's like you're inside a dome, and you have all the buttons and stuff. It's like you're in the cockpit. That's pretty cool. So I would definitely pick that up as well. And this is one I don't think it would even be possible to find. There's two of them, actually. One of them I think is 100% like impossible. And I think I mentioned this in a super early episode. I would buy, it would be so pointless, but I would buy the Tekken 3 arcade, where you could actually stand in the circle and you fight using your own body. I don't know if those are even around on Earth anymore, or if they dismantled them and threw them in a ditch like it was the ET video game. But if I could find one of those, that would be like the coolest thing ever. And I'm sure that's the funny thing about like arcade games and things that have come up in like the olden era of gaming. There are some things out there where it's like, man, I know there are people that probably don't even know that exists. And I don't know, I'm sure you could look it up and find some footage of it, but I'll never forget doing that. And like the line, once again, shout out to GameWorks, they had it there, and the line was super long, because it was like, you could play Tekken 3, like one of the best Tekken games around, and then you stand in the circle and you punch and you duck and you kick. I don't know if it was even remotely possible. The first thing that just came to my mind, there's no way you could possibly pull off a real combo. Like, there's no way. There is no way on Earth that you could manage to do some movements with your actual body and it connected enough to be like, yep, I did the whole king grapple combo. Like, it's not possible. There's no way anyone was able to pull that off. That would be magic. You'd have to be a sorcerer to pull that off, because it's not possible. That's old, 1990s tech. When did Tekken 3 come out? Early 2000s, 1998, something like that. Oh no, it would be early 2000s, because 98 was still like, yeah, that was, no. Yeah, still PS1. It was possible. It was like 98, 99 when Tekken 3 was out. So you imagine that sort of technology, and it's like, yeah, you could barely get the punches and kicks off. Like, the ducking was kind of iffy, but it was a cool experience. And if I had the money, I would pick that up. I'd have to have a ridiculous amount of space for it as well, because that thing was huge. From like the little memory I have from being a kid playing that, but I would pick that up. The Tekken 3 arcade, where you actually use your body to fight, I would 100% pick that up. You could take that to parties. I mean, once again, it would be huge. You'd have to get like a straight up U-Haul truck to take it around the parties. But that would be like a photo booth, and it's like, yeah, it's Tekken 3, but you use your body to fight. You'd make $1 million off of that game these days, just for like the fun, the ridiculous factor of being able to do that, people would love that even to this day. You could take that to an effing wedding and it would be like, yeah, everybody was on that all day long. It would totally work, but you'd have to find it first. Another arcade cabinet that I would love, that I don't think would be too easy to find. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't know about, and this, as always, allows me to do my staple reference for Resident Evil. It's the Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica game. So a lot of people don't like that. Minute history, not even a history, I'll just reference it. So there's Survivor, and then there's Survivor 2. There's also a third Survivor game, but that was changed to Resident Evil Dead Aim here in the States, but that's the third Survivor game. So the first one was on PS1, the second one was PS2, and the second game is based off of the Code Veronica game. So it's like an arcadey version of that game, and it's a co-op game. So a lot of people don't like that game. Like in general, the first two Survivor games are not really loved by the community, we'll say. But if you ask some people that actually have like gone through and played all the games, they'll say like, yeah, I actually think Survivor 1 is better than Survivor 2. Now, I haven't played Survivor 1 since the first time I played it when it was a new Resident Evil game, and it disgusted me and I hated it. And then at some point years later in my life, my dad and I were at an arcade that is no longer there. Don't remember the name of it, but it was one on 8 Mile. That's all I got. It used to be on 8 Mile, had a race car track. I hit the tires so hard when I was racing one time, my chest hurt. I was not looking. I hit that junk hard. Like I felt the pain in my chest, and I was like, I hit this really hard. Like, so, boom, there's one memory there. But the other one was that they had an arcade game that was the Resident Evil Survivor Code Veronica game, which I'd never even heard of it when I first saw that. I was like, holy crap, there's a Resident Evil arcade game. And it was 2 players. And the way they had it was one of the things, it's kind of like the old sniper games where the gun was there and you could actually use it to turn your character, because in the Survivor games, you still walk around the whole environment. So it's not really on rails. It's actually like you do walk around, like you turn, you walk forward, you walk backwards, all of that stuff. So you fully control the character. So it was, for people that actually played Code Veronica, it was like the gun that Claire has in like the key art, the gun that she dual wields with. It's that gun. So that's the gun that you use as the controller, and you push it forward to walk forward, you swivel it left or right to turn, so on and so forth. And then you just actually aim to shoot wherever you want to aim on screen. And so I played that with my dad for a little bit, and it was like, this is crazy. Like I never knew that was a thing. And I don't think a lot of Resident Evil fans know that even exists. Even for people that know that there's a second Survivor game, I don't think a lot of people know that was straight up in the arcades, which is probably why it's a lesser game even compared to the first one, because there's no story. It was literally made as an arcade game. The first Survivor game was 100% made for consoles, and then the second one, they kind of double dipped and was like, well, we'll do it for consoles, but also it's like, this was made as an arcade game, so that's why it doesn't have an original story, and it's just an arcadey version of Code Veronica, even though you can still walk around. It's super weird, because I'm like, you can control yourself, you have to walk around to get keys and stuff. It's an oddly in-depth arcade game, but the fact that there's an arcade cabinet clearly shows like this was kind of the priority of them making this thing, is that it was meant to be played at an arcade. And so it's kind of a lesser version, of course, of Code Veronica. That it has none of the story, and plus they randomly throw in Nemesis if you don't get the keys in time. But I would love to have it just for the sake of having it as a Resident Evil arcade. I don't know if any other Resident Evil arcade games even exist, because like I said, I don't believe they did it for the first game. I think that was specifically made for PS1. And then Dead Aim, they did make for consoles, and that's third person, but you go into first person when you aim. And once again, that has an actual story. So I think only that second Survivor game is the one that's like here's just an arcadey shoot 'em up. And I think that's why it always ends up being the one that everyone's like, if you play both the games, a lot of people that are huge Resident Evil fans are like, yeah, the second Survivor game is kind of trash. And it's like, oh, that's interesting that people feel that way, because my first experience was playing it at an arcade. So it was like, yeah, it's an arcade game. So I kind of have that different perspective on it. But I would love to have that just as a piece of like Resident Evil history, because I'm like, I'm sure they never did that again, where they made, a Resident Evil arcade cabinet. But I always have that memory in my head where I'm like, whoa, there is a Code Veronica arcade game. And that was a super good memory for, what a lot of people say is not a super good game. So it is what it is. But if I had the money, I'd pick that one up for sure. I would love to have, like I said, a bit of Resident Evil history. That's just like that rare thing, like, Resident Evil arcade cabinet. I'd buy it just to have it. Plus, I never actually played through those games. So if I was going to do that today, I was gonna say it would be easier. It would not be easier to try to buy a who knows how many $1,000 arcade cabinet that's effing ginormous, of course, because it's 2 players, so it's got the 2 screens and the 2 guns. It's huge. It's even bigger. If I remember correctly, it's probably bigger than. No, it couldn't be bigger than the. Now that's a hard one to say. I can't remember if it was actually bigger than the Tekken thing, because people could watch you play that, but I'm sure you could just hook up a random TV to that. I don't think the TV was like attached to that whole Tekken setup, but people could watch you play. And obviously you had to be able to see what you were doing. There was a screen on it, so I'm sure you could just get like a random TV to hook up to that. But I don't know, huge either way. It's an arcade cabinet. They're effing big and heavy. But I would love to pick that up. Like I said, Time Crisis, Star Wars, the 2 Star Wars cabinets. I wouldn't pick up like the classic cabinet. I don't really need that. I'm not too invested in like the old Star Wars original cabinet or anything like that. I wouldn't pick up, even though it'd actually be kind of cool. I wouldn't pick up Dragon's Lair. Once again, very cool, but I'm not like the Dragon's Lair fan or anything. I played it like once, and it's cool. It's definitely, especially at the time, it was one of the most unique things ever. But it's just like, okay, definitely cool. It would be cool, historically speaking, to have a Dragon's Lair cabinet, but I wouldn't pick it up because, like I said, I don't have that attachment, which is, why this is a let's discuss thing. I would love to know, the cabinets you guys would pick up and just random little memories you guys have with, the old arcade games. But something else, well, I guess it's not an arcade cabinet, but I definitely have pinball. I just love pinball, so I would have a pinball machine in some way, shape, or form. So just to throw that out there, I would get pinball. I'd probably do a good Ninja Turtles pinball machine. There's one that I played, and I was like, this is a great Ninja Turtles cabinet. And I'm sure there's some good Transformers ones out there. I would love to get a Transformers. I know there's the Terminator 2 one, which is pretty cool. So I'd probably get like a couple pinball machines in there. But going back to the topic at hand, we'll say, as far as, classic cabinets and stuff like that, it would be interesting. I don't know if I would actually do it, but I want to say it was a part of a franchise, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a House of the Dead game, but there's one there's some 3D zombie shooter game, and you sit in, you put the glasses on, and it's like a 3D thing, and it like shoots the wind at you, and it, it's like a whole 3D experience, and you get like the bursts of wind, and the audio is ridiculously loud. I remember playing like they would have like the screams from the banshees and stuff, and I'm like, it's a little too loud. Like I'm in here and it's enclosed and it's already loud, and then it just bounces through my brain. I'm like, it's a little screechy, but fun experience, blasting with wind and stuff, and it was like, and it's in 3D. Like, this is actually kind of cool. So I might pick that up, turn the volume down like just a notch, but I would probably pick that up if I had the money, because that was like, I always remember that being cool. And I can't remember the name, but I swear it's like, much like all 3D movies, when they, for the first 20 effing years of 3D films, it was like, this game 3D, like it just had 3D at the end of it. But I'm sure some of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'd probably pick that up, unlimited money. Why not? Why not get a 3D arcade cabinet? Really, it's more of like a 4D experience, with the wind and all that stuff. So that would definitely be cool. I want to say Jurassic Park, because it's a classic. It's another staple. It was never like one where I was like, oh, it's, holy crap, I don't think of it all the time when I think of, my arcade cabinet purchases, but Jurassic Park was there. It was a classic one. It was definitely in there. And if I remember, that's the one, had like the yellow gun to it and stuff like that. That was like the first one. But I'd probably get Jurassic Park just for this nostalgia of it all. And it was a decent game. It was still fun. So it was a good arcade game. I'd probably pick up, some old school Jurassic Park arcade cabinets. But other than that, I don't know if there's much else I can think of when it comes to like the big arcade cabinets or anything like that. I went my super old school stuff. Oh, actually, you know what? Going back to super old school, I would buy Centipede. I actually love Centipede as like an old school arcade game, and I would definitely get it with the I'd get it with the trackball, because that's how you're supposed to do it. So I'd get it. Well, I'd probably get a combo if I could, infinite money and all that crap. Get the combo. At that point, it would just be a custom arcade cabinet like you could buy anywhere and just have a bunch of emulators on it. But I'd get the trackball for Centipede. Why not include Millipede on there? Missile Command. I do love Missile Command. Random, this is why I do this. Here's a random story that I have with a huge connection to Centipede and Missile Command. And this is actually what made me love those games. And this is going to be crazy if you don't already know where I'm headed. But the reason I actually got into Centipede and Missile Command and like fell in love with those games is because of Terminator 3. And it's specifically because Terminator 3 of course, has a video game tie-in, and I owned the Terminator 3 video game, and there were like random parts that they made where you could unlock classic Atari games, and I forgot exactly how they did it. I think it was just either you do certain things or maybe you like find them in the world. I think that's what it was. Like you would literally find an arcade cabinet, and then once you played it, and like once you stopped playing it, it was like boom, you unlock this game, and you just go to like an extra menu, and it was like boom, here you go. And they just included, because it was Atari, for anyone that didn't know that, Atari had like the gaming rights for Terminator, at least specifically for Terminator 3. And so they just threw in like some of their classics, and it was like, all right, here you go, Missile Command, which was specifically referenced in Terminator 2, for anyone that doesn't remember that. But Missile Command was in T2. So it was like, boom, here's Missile Command, and then also Centipede. And so there were tons of times, especially after I actually beat the Terminator game, which wasn't horrible, by the way, as a licensed tie-in game. Another one I forgot to reference back in the, in that other episode. But the T3 game wasn't the worst thing in the world, because they actually had a bunch of missions they just got to make up, and was like, here you go, you can play in the future. And it's like, okay, well, I'll give you like 75% of this game is really good, because there's still some stuff from the actual movie that's fun to play through, but definitely being like, yeah, let me go to the future and play in the future. Of course, that's what you want in a Terminator game. So, I'll give it like a good 60 to 75% of that game is pretty fun. Probably more if you count the amount of hours that I honestly put into just being like, oh, Centipede's a fun game. Hadn't really played it until that T3 game came out, and Missile Command was the same thing. And it was like, once I picked that up and unlocked those in the game, and it was like, this is really cool. Like, Centipede is super awesome. So I fell in love with Centipede. I really like Missile Command. I wouldn't say I love Missile Command, but I love Centipede. Centipede is like one of the best. So I'd get a cabinet at least with those two on it. And like I said, just why not throw in Millipede? That would be ridiculous not to if you're just getting emulators. But because of Terminator 3, I love Centipede, and I really, really enjoy Missile Command. I'm also a lot better at Centipede. That may or may not play a part in why I love one versus the other, but I do just think it's more fun. And Missile Command definitely gets really tough as you go forward, which is fun, of course, but I just always enjoyed Centipede a little bit more. Also, the weird strategy of like you hit the bug and then it turns into a mushroom. You can like actually strategize that a little bit, and you can do a little bit of strategy in Missile Command as well. Obviously, you try to hit a missile and have it like blow up in the center to hit like two missiles coming at you at one time. So there's strategy in both, but because of Terminator 3, I love Centipede. So I would definitely get those two as an old thing. But stuff like that is why I enjoy doing this weird series I'm doing, where I'm just like rambling to and from work, because stuff like that is like, I never would have remembered that. Even when I was talking about movie tie-in games, I was like, I didn't think at all about the fact that I had, and still have, I just don't really know where my Xbox games are, but I still have it. I still have that. I have Van Helsing too. I had that back in the day. I still own that game on the original Xbox. Forgot about both of those. Those were two huge games for me, because I didn't have, it was the original Xbox at that time. Not like I was buying the game, so I was playing what I was playing. Plus, I like those movies because I still like Terminator 3 just a little bit. And Van Helsing, I stand by Van Helsing. Everyone acts like that movie's garbage. That movie's good. I don't know what people be talking about. Van Helsing's a good movie. You're crazy. Like, I enjoy that movie. The game is interesting and has some of the weirdest cheat codes ever. They had a lot of like texture cheat codes in that game. Once again, something else I didn't think about during my cheat codes episode. They had a bunch of weird stuff. Look up the Van Helsing cheat codes. Legit, it's like the weirdest things ever. Like, you could change the texture to like these just random moving textures. Like, the whole world would look like it's moving because they just slap a texture over it. And then you could have your character be the same texture or a different texture. So it's like, you can just have like pink clouds, just as an example. Like, pink clouds would just be roaming over literally everything, enemies and the world, and then you'd just be sticking out. And it's like, but if you want to blend in, you can have pink textures roll over you too. Like, it was such weird things. Like, they were just like, boom, here's just some pointless texture cheat codes, and they didn't really look great. They just looked weird. They were super weird. But look up Van Helsing cheat codes if you want to. But I think that's good for me as far as the arcade cabinets. Like I said, I think, with that last little bit that I got out of my brain with Centipede and Missile Command, I think that's about everything. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would really pull like any golf games or like the deer hunting games. I never really cared much for those. I don't really like golf games in general. Even when it comes to like Wii Golf, I'm just like, eh. So I wouldn't pick up any of those. The deer hunting games, I don't think I'd pick up. Like, I got enough shooters, so I don't really need to shoot fake deer. It's not even as fun, for me personally at least. If you're a hunter, I'm sure that's very different. People that like golf, I'm sure you like, what's that, mini T golf or whatever they call it. So everybody's different, but I would love to know what cabinets you guys would pick up if you had all the money in the world. You know, which ones, like I said, you know, those rare things that you might have discovered, whereas like most people that appreciate that franchise don't even know that that exists. So definitely let me know, like, favorite cabinets you guys just have great memories about. What would you pick up and kind of put back in your life and whatever, you know, your home-based arcade. So definitely let me know, and please put those comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.